Brad.
Hey, John.
So Mike Muscala, how long were you guys targeting him? What made you decide that he was a guy that could help?
Yeah, I mean, I think as you go through the league, you just keep tidbits in your mind of how you think guys would fit. I mean, when people describe Mike that I knew well, whether in coaching or whether playing with him or whatever, they always talked about the way he approached his work, the way he was as a teammate, the way he competed to win, and that was the most important thing. Anybody that played with him would tell you they love playing with him, which is like a, alarm goes off in your head, like that's a person you want to have around. And so, I think that he was a guy that we've been talking to OKC for a little bit about, depending on what happened here in the trade deadline, because we thought he was a guy that, can fit with really any combination of our bigs. And, in the last couple of years, we've been good when we played big. He's versatile enough to do some different things defensively, but he's also obviously super skilled and, makes the right play. The ball doesn't stick in his hands very long, all that stuff.
He's here, he's active.
He's here, and I think he's active. He was in there getting ready to go shoot. So he got here last night, did his physical this morning, and cleared now.
And with Al Horford with the knee issue, was there an added priority in getting a player like Mike, just, a big that can shoot?
Not that knee issue had nothing really to. I mean, I think that's going to be a very short-term thing. I mean, he feels pretty good, but we're just being conservative with Al. And it was just the idea, again, of can we get one more guy with size that can stretch the floor, that can play with any of our guys. It's hard to find guys that can play with Rob, can play with Al, can play with our other bigs. And, the other thing that is kind of the hard part about this team is if we were going to make a move where, somebody said, we bring in a person that's going to play a ton of minutes, right? You almost have to subtract somebody that plays a ton of minutes. And our team has, a good way about itself. I think we've got good depth. I think we've got 13 players that can play and impact each other in a really good way. But we also have a bunch of guys that don't need to do it every night. And so that ability to play but not have to need to play is a big deal. And I think that's what we need to have as a team. It's not about an individual. This is about a goal. And, I think Mike understands that, and our other players understand that. I think our guys on our team this year have shown that. I mean, I think Blake Griffin's a great example of that. Sometimes he doesn't play for a couple of games and just comes back to work, and then he has a huge game the other night. The only reason we stayed close in the game the other night was because Blake hit a few threes and gave us a chance. So, that's what we need.
Hey, Brad. What went into targeting a big man? Obviously, you have a number of them on the roster already. And how did that kind of position and your desire to add another one evolve over the first half of the season?
Well, I think, obviously Rob has only played in 20 games or whatever this year, and so you got to be alert to that. We are going to not play Al on the second night of back-to-backs. That's going to be the way it's going to be the whole year. And so, you got a couple more of those too. And then, we put a lot on our other guys. And like I said earlier, there's going to be nights where, Mike Muscala is going to be asked to play a big role because of the way that he can impact that particular game or that particular matchup. And there are going to be other nights where somebody else is, right? And that's the good part about this. And we just wanted as much versatility as possible. We got Gallo sitting over there, and he's getting faster on the treadmill, but, can't throw him in a game. But there's another guy that could probably stand out there and make shots if we really needed him to.
How concerning is Jaylen's injury? Is surgery potentially needed there? Do you have a timeline on him yet? And
yeah, I mean the latest with the Jaylen information is it looks like no surgery, but we're going to see how he feels over the next few days. He's already been fitted for a mask. He's still feeling it. Doesn't feel great. So we'll see how he feels when he starts moving around, and then we'll get together early in the week and kind of figure out what's next. But doesn't look like it's going to be too long, which is a good thing.
You feel good about your wing rotation, given that you made no moves in that position?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously have an open roster spot. We could decide to address that with another wing, but the reality of our team is again, if we bring in somebody that needs to play 20 minutes, or that, then Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon off the bench don't play as much, right? And then Grant Williams doesn't play as much. Now we got a lot of options that we can push the guards up. Smart, Brogdon, White can play more wings, right? And Grant can play a smaller big, and now we can play bigger. So whatever we call wings and bigs these days, it's just a bunch of dudes that can play and hopefully make each other better.
You mentioned kind of the depth of this team. Jayson is right near the top of the league in minutes played.
Yeah.
He's talked about how he's kind of battled with you guys a little bit because he always wants to be out there and you guys push him back.
It's a fight, yeah.
How do you, bringing in Mike, obviously, wanting to, especially given the finals last year, you talked about being worn down and exhausted. How do you guys kind of want to balance that over these final 30 games or so?
Yeah, I mean, it's a discussion point, and obviously we've mapped that out. With Jayson in particular, you're exactly right. Like, Jayson was really feeling it yesterday and felt a little bit better today. I don't know exactly what his status is right now, but he's going to go out and warm up, and I know he's going to want to play. He just doesn't like to sit. I can tell you already, we're going to make him sit one of those games, right? We'll probably make him sit Wednesday just because of the toll that he's already taken. But he'll fight us on that too, right? But I think the reality is we need to balance it right, but we also need to make sure that he gets enough high-minute games too. So it is a balance. I think the idea of having a night or two or playing a little bit less is all good, but you also need a few, especially heading into the playoffs, 40, 42-minute games to get ready for those games. So there's a balance, but I think we're in good shape with that. He feels good physically, which is a good thing. But he's, he wants to play, and I'm really happy because I think really should be celebrated for that, because he's one of those, I don't know if it's throwback or whatever, but he does not like to sit.
And did you know, yesterday after the deal for Mike, all right, we're done, or was there a point, I don't know, can you give us a window into how the day unfolded? Was there a point where you guys were looking for anything bigger or close to anything bigger?
I mean, it's interesting because, everybody's just kind of around that day, but you're having all those talks for months leading up to that, and so you pretty much know what's real and what's not. And so it was pretty quiet for us after the deal from Mike, I would say.
The three-guard lineups have been productive this season. Was that relevant to both not trading Peyton Pritchard and not making a deal for a wing?
Yeah, and I would just add to like Peyton's really good, and inevitably last year we played several, or at least a couple of playoff games without Smart, right? And then you can't, you don't know what's going to happen. And Peyton's a good player who's proven he can play in the playoffs, and it's not an easy situation for him. But like I said earlier, we could play him to point and bump others up to the wings, and those have been good lineups because they're good players. And so yeah, that certainly factored in. But again, I don't know what we'll do with our last spot, and we'll take our time and evaluate that appropriately. And if we find somebody that feel like we fit, that'd be great.
Hey, Brad. Two points. The policy toward Marcus. Are you just being very conservative with him because you never know, and with his
With the
health?
ankle?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Marcus, the latest that I've heard is Marcus is feeling a lot better. He's been out on the court. I don't know. I haven't talked to Phil Coles today about what exactly the next step is, but he's got a little bit of pain in that same ankle that he sprained last year and then re-aggravated in the fall. So, but he looks like he's getting a lot closer to me when he's on the court.
You're just being very conservative with him because he's so valuable to the team. I mean, you wouldn't put.
Well, I mean, I think just generally, big picture, it's obviously we rely on, not only the medical specialists, but also the pain that guys are feeling, right? And I think ultimately, we're not going to put anybody out there until they can play and aren't at risk of re-aggravating for sure.
And the other thing I wanted to ask you, arguably, teams made moves because of the Durant trade. Did you, without revealing too much, did you watch Milwaukee and Boston? I mean, Milwaukee picks up Jay, and would that have influenced your thinking at all in terms of how you were approaching yesterday?
No, I think, every team's got to do what they think is best to help their team be in the best position possible. Obviously, Jay's really good player, has been here, and I'm really fond of him. Impacts winning in a lot of good ways, and there were several other teams that added players, right? And like I said earlier, for us, it was more about, once you start adding, players that are going to play minutes in a rotation, you're taking those away from someone else. And then does that affect how good everyone else is when they do play, right? And so if you can find a rhythm where you have a team that has enough and fits well, it's kind of what you're trying to do. And so hopefully, for me, it was not as much about acquiring, the player that may win the most individual games, but it's more about fitting it all together.
We were seeing role players moving for like 4 or 5 second-round picks, kind of unprecedented. What did you think of the, deflation of the value of second-rounders, and how did that affect your negotiations?
It didn't affect us. I mean, we were pretty clear on kind of what we thought and what we had, assessed value-wise to different people, and we were fine moving on if it wasn't the right fit. I think that it's hard to tell. I mean, some people value things differently. I think it's as much that as it is like how protected people were with first-round picks, right? Obviously, not the big trade, but there were a lot of trades that were 4 or 5 second-round picks that maybe in the past are protected first, whatever the case may be. But I'm not going to act like I know 10 years worth of history because I've only been doing it for 2. Mike might know. He would know. Yes.
Brad, in perhaps filling that last roster spot in the buyout market, is that a culture thing as much as it is a talent thing? A guy who can maybe understand his role might be reduced from before, and how much does that play to when you're searching to fill that 15th spot?
I mean, there's a lot of different ways to look at it, but I think the way that you phrased it is, can play, but doesn't need to play. It's a hard needle to thread, right? And then I don't blame anybody that wouldn't want to fill that role, but I think we're really deep right now, and we already have a bunch of guys that are giving up for one cause, and they've done it. And before you got in here, I was talking about what Blake's meant and his ability to just step in the other night after not playing a lot, and his willingness to do that, which is not an easy thing to do. If there was something that moves the needle even differently, then we have to consider it, obviously. But I think that that's probably the most likely thing. And so you'll look at it and you'll decide, okay, is there somebody that fits that need and is really excited to be here if that's the case? Or do you feel like you've got that all filled and maybe invest in a younger player? And so we're going to assess all that over the next few days and try to figure it out.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Presented by your New England Ford dealers. Built for America. Built Ford proud.